Good morning. Some of you might have noticed that our daughter has left our 3 grandchildren with us, and one of them is a baby. So, Kim, if I fall asleep during the sermon, will you throw something at me? Kind of a little worn out. We are finishing Ecclesiastes this morning. It has been quite the journey. I chose that picture for a reason that you see on the screen back there, because it is a journey that Qoholet has been on, searching for meaning in his life, and now this morning we will conclude. I wanted to bring something in the bulletin to your attention. We are having a cookout for our neighbors at Northview Apartment, which is just right over here, Tuesday evening. So check that out in the bulletin. Please come. We want to develop a relationship with these folks. We want to care for them. We want to share Jesus with them. And the first step, of course, is getting to know them and them getting to know us. So please come Tuesday night and be a part of that. At the end of the lesson this morning, we'll sing a song and stand. That is our tradition. At that time, a couple of our elders and their wives will be out the back door and down to the left in the conference room. And if you would like to meet with them for prayer, we really encourage you to do that. If you have heard something this morning that has moved you, that you want to know something more about Jesus, or if you've just been thinking about that, they would love to meet with you about that as well. However, if you're a person that says, I think I'm ready to be baptized into Christ this morning, you just come up to the front and let us know. We'll do that this morning. We're going to go into Ecclesiastes now. Want to do as we customarily do and ask God to be with the preaching of His Word. Let's pray. Dear Father, we are thankful for this book. We're thankful for the way Qoholet has wrestled with life, with the meaning of life, of the difficulties of life, because we ourselves have wrestled with those. We're thankful for its message that we hear today, and as we reflect upon it in our own lives, ask that you would bless the preaching and the hearing of your word. As through your Son we pray. Amen. Okay, so I showed up on my first day of high school, paper in hand to go find my classes, and I was dressed a little odd. Even for me, I felt it was a little odd. Have you ever done that? You get out of the house and you realize, I've got a black shoe on and a brown shoe on, right? And now that's all you can think about as you go on. So I'm trying to find my class, and I get over to the first building, and the door is locked. Can't open it up. And so I start looking around for someone to ask, and there's a teacher in the hall. And I ask the teacher, and he says, your first class has actually been moved. It's on the other side of campus. So I walk to the other side of campus. I'm getting a little anxious because I'm running late now. And I walk to the other side, and I cannot find the building that he told me. And I'm looking all around. It's not here, it's not here, it's not here. And now I'm really running late. And so I decide to ask some other students I see wandering around who seem to be equally lost. And none of them will even make eye contact with me. They won't even talk to me. And so now I'm feeling really anxious because I'm going to be seriously late for my class, and I'm going to get in there, and I'm dressed odd, and they're going to stare at me, and I'm going to be the laughing stock of the school. And you know what happened next? I woke up. How many of you had dreams like that, right? But usually you're not like dressed weird, you're just not dressed at all, right? You've had those kinds of dreams. You may have something of an experience like that this morning, of waking up from a dream, because we have been hearing from Qoholet. Now, if you've not been with us through this whole series of lessons, I would just remind all the folks that have been here and just tell you that the word Qoholet is the Hebrew word for teacher or preacher. So it gets translated this way, chapter 1, verse 2. Meaningless, meaningless, says the teacher. Okay, so this is the Hebrew word Qoholet. We've just called him Qoholet all the way through. Qoholet's voice is the one that we hear 95% of the time in the book. Now, of course, you're thinking, what about the other 5%? We'll come back to that in a moment. But his is the voice we hear 95% of the time in the book. And 95% of the time, what Qoholet is describing to us is life under the sun. What his experiences are like under the sun. And 22 times he talks about under the sun, something happening under the sun. Here's an example of that. All this I saw as I applied my mind to everything done under the sun. So he's talking about all this stuff that happens under the sun. And basically what Qoholet is a philosopher. Specifically, he's an empirical philosopher. An empiricist is a person that just observes things. What you see is what you get. And so he's been observing. He's been looking around to see what's been going on in the world under the sun. And after he's taken this long, hard look at life, he has discovered life is meaningless. It's all a chasing after the wind. First problem, death looms large. It's like the Kardashians. It's everywhere. And it's coming after your friends, and it will catch up with your friends and your family and your dog, and sooner or later, it's just a matter of time, it's going to catch up with you as well. And you might say, well, that's just fine because I'm going to die and I'm going to go and be with God. And Qoholet's response to this is, and you know this how? Because when I look under the sun, I don't see anything under the sun that would suggest we're going to go off and be with God, that there's any kind of afterlife. I just don't see it. Basically, Qoholet is an agnostic about the afterlife. Humans, animals, for him, seems like they all go to the same place. Good, bad, same place. And what is that place? It is Sheol. It is the pit. It is the grave. At one point, Qoholet says, it's just really better to be dead than living, because if you're dead, at least you're not worrying about things anymore. And then he kind of later changes his mind and says, well, it's better to be a living dog than a dead lion. So that's problem number one. Death is just looming large in the book and in life under the sun. Second problem is the world is just full of injustice. The righteous, have you noticed this? The righteous die young, and wicked, evil people somehow find a way to live a long time. And these wicked, evil people are often religious people, and they are the leaders of your country. So, death looms large, and wicked, evil people seem to be dominating things, religious, wicked, evil people, and they continue to seem to live for a longer time. So, what is it we are to do about this? Qoholet says, if you realize that's the situation in the world, you know what you ought to do? Seize the day. Party it up. Enjoy your food. Enjoy your wine. Enjoy your wife. Not necessarily in that order, but enjoy them. Have a good time. And do it now before you become worm food. These are all the things that Qoholet has discovered under the sun. Summed up, it would go something like this. Life is short, and then you die. Or life is tough, and then you die. And in his great wisdom, Qoholet thought it would be good to depress all the rest of us with that finding, right? But there is another voice, and this is the waking up from the dream part that I talked about. There is this other voice, this other 5% in the story. And it's easy to miss this voice, the voice of the narrator of the story, because he speaks so little. But he uses the third person when he speaks. So I take you back again to chapter 1, verse 2. You notice he says, meaningless, meaningless, says the teacher. He refers to the teacher in the third person. And we'll go down further in chapter 1 after the narrator has introduced things, and then you'll start hearing from Qoholet himself, who will speak in the first person. So it goes like this. I, the teacher, was king over Israel in Jerusalem. Some scholars refer to him as the frame narrator because he basically frames the book. You have him introducing the thing at the beginning, and then you have him at the end come back and sort of give the epilogue about all of it. So you have Qoholet who's going to speak in the middle, but the narrator who's going to speak at the beginning. He introduces all of it. Qoholet speaks, and then at the end, the narrator comes back and wraps things up. Not only was the teacher wise, now he's speaking in the third person, so you know it's the narrator. Not only was the teacher wise, but he also imparted knowledge to the people. He pondered and searched out and set in order many proverbs. Well, when you think about this, then you realize that the big point in all of Ecclesiastes, the big theology, is really not coming from Qoholet. It's coming from the narrator who says this, who gives us this epilogue at the end. Because you might have noticed, if you've been reading along in Ecclesiastes, you just might have noticed that Qoholet's just a little bit on the pessimistic side. Just a little bit hopeless about life. and kind of thinks God is AWOL. God is, there, of course, but he doesn't seem to be involved as far as Qoholet is concerned. So imagine this. You've sat down with your teenage son to read Nietzsche, the philosopher Nietzsche. That happens a lot, right? Okay. You sat down with your teenage son to read the philosopher Nietzsche, and you begin by saying, now we're going to read this, Thus Spake Zarathustra. Okay, this is this great work by Nietzsche. You need to know something about Nietzsche. First of all, Nietzsche hated Christianity, and he thought God was meaningless if he even existed at all. In fact, he really just said God is dead. Okay? Real nihilist and a pretty meaningless guy in his own life. And by the way, he went insane at the end of his life. Okay, so now let's start reading Nietzsche, right? So you read through Nietzsche with your teenage son, and at the end you say, okay, now you've heard everything from Nietzsche, but let me tell you some problems with Nietzsche and where he goes wrong. Well, that's really something of what the narrator has done here. He's introduced Qoholet, he's let Qoholet speak all the way through, and now he's come back to give us the epilogue at the end. Now, he's not saying that everything that Qoholet said was wrong or bad. In fact, he praises him at the end, as we'll see in just a moment. But it's based on a limited understanding of life. It's based on life under the sun. Only in the experiences that you can see and feel in this life is Qoholet talking. And so the narrator then says he wants to talk about life above the sun. So he says not only was the teacher wise, but he also imparted knowledge to the people. He pondered and searched out and set in order many proverbs. The teacher searched to find just the right words, and what he wrote was upright and true. The words of the wise are like goads. They're collected sayings like firmly embedded nails, given by one shepherd. Be warned, my son, of anything in addition to them. Of making many books there is no end, and much study wearies the body. All you students get that, right? Now, all has been heard. Here is the conclusion of the matter. Fear God and keep His commandments, for this is the whole duty of mankind. For God will bring every deed into judgment, including every hidden thing, whether it is good or evil. Now you notice he starts out praising Qoholet. The teacher was wise. He had really great things to say, and you ought to pay attention to those things. And about now your teenage son is saying, hold on, let me get this straight. What you're telling me is he's described this life under the sun as really depressing, really bad. You're going to die. You should just party it up all you can because you're going to die. So that's what you're telling me, Dad. And the dad says, yep. And the son says, and you're calling that wise? And the dad says, yep, absolutely. If you buy into Qoholet's worldview. If what you see is what you get. If God is AWOL, that God is not present in the world, not involved in our lives, then yes, He's very wise, and He offers us a lot of things. We've been going through Ecclesiastes. We hate to get to the point at the end here and say, this has all been a waste of time, except for the last few verses. There's actually some great deal of wisdom in all of this for living under the sun. What the narrator wants to say is, there is more than under the sun. But he says, this is how it goes if you only think about under the sun. This is where this is going to lead. These are hard words. They're like goads. They're like nails. And the world is full of books about all of this stuff. Self-help books. You can read them. They just line the shelves. Been to Barnes and Noble? Been to Barnes and Noble, right? And they got this making of many books again, this statement. There is no end, and much study wearies the body. Have you seen these book bags they've got at Barnes & Noble? Got all these quotes on there from different authors, right? Like this one right here, reading is to the mind what exercise is to the body. Oh, that's a good quote. And this other quote on here. You know what I have never seen on any of the book bags at Barnes & Noble? I've never seen this. Of making of many books, there is no end, and much study wearies the body. Nobody ever thought that was good to put on a book bag at Barnes & Noble. It just doesn't seem to sell many books, right? But this is really what the narrator is telling us. There are a lot of books written, and you can go and read Nietzsche, and you can go and read Hume, and you can go and read Ayn Rand. And what you're going to find out after you've read all of these books, because the making of them, there is no end about how to live under the sun, you're going to come to the same conclusion as Qoholet. It's all meaningless. So Qoholet gives great advice built upon living under the sun and built upon the idea that God is AWOL. Well, if this is how you view the world, that God is not involved, and we're just going to live this short life and then it's going to be over, then you're going to look for some kind of center to your life. Your center might be your career. And so you'll put all of your energy into your career trying to build this up. This is where you're finding significance. This is where you're finding meaning in your life. Or maybe you'll be just trying to make it all happen in pleasure. You're working just enough to get some money so you can get high on the weekends and really enjoy that. Or maybe you're going to find your center in your family and you're going to build your life around your kids. But whatever it is, this center is going to be the utmost for you. It's going to be the thing that you live for. It's going to be the driving force in your life. It will be your God. Because a life lived only under the sun ultimately leads to idolatry. And if you read the Bible enough, you start realizing that we religious people have this easy way of slipping right back into idolatry all the time. No sooner had Moses gone up onto the mountain to get the message from God than his brother Aaron started a statue factory down below. Let's start making a god down here. And the people started worshiping this god. And it just really seems crazy because we're talking about the God who brought them out of Egypt. We're talking about the 10 plagues. We're talking about the parting of the Red Sea. And now they're going to make this image and worship this image instead? But this is the insidious nature of idolatry. The folks down at the bottom of the mountain with Aaron didn't think they were engaging in idolatry. You know what Aaron said to the people? This is your God, this golden calf, who brought you out of Egypt, who did the 10 plagues, who parted the Red Sea. They just thought they were worshiping God as they slipped into idolatry. So you have idolatry that comes through the back door and idolatry through the front door. Idolatry through the front door is when you just start looking at life as being under the sun. That's all there is. And you're going to have to find some kind of meaning and significance in your life. And so basically, you're going to find this center, whatever it is for you. You're going to find this center. It's not going to be God because you think God is AWOL. And you're going to give yourself completely to that. Or the back door. You actually believe in God, but you start finding meaning and fulfillment and significance in the things of this life, any of those things we described. And although you believe in God, He basically for you has become AWOL. And so while in theory you are a believer in God, you're not an idolater, in practice you really are an idolater. So if you think about it, you might ask yourself, what is it that really gives me meaning? When I just scrape away everything, what is it that really gives me meaning? What is made out to be meaningless if it's taken away? What if the American dream is taken away? Would life be meaningless? What about your career? Where would you find significance then? What about the things that give you enjoyment, pleasure, the quilting, the golfing, the fishing, whatever it is? What if those were taken away? Would your life be meaningless then? What about your political affiliations? What if you discovered that your party was lying to you all along? Would it all be taken away? Would it be meaningless then? What about sex? What if there wasn't any? Would life be meaningless then? What if your friends were taken away? What if your family was taken away? Would life be meaningless then? Or, if you want to reverse it, what if you stripped away all of those things? Would God be enough? Would God give you meaning? Would life be worth living? Or again, reversing it, if you stripped away God, would you be able to find, if you just sort of removed God from your life, would you be able to find meaning in your life if God was just out of the picture? Would there be any real difference going on in your life? Would life be worth living? What the narrator is trying to say to us here in the epilogue is, you can see why Qoholet's way just won't work. Because if you're going to be honest with it, you're going to realize this is it, nothing else is happening, death is looming, injustice is everywhere, and the best you can do is enjoy your food, enjoy your wife, and enjoy your wine, and that's it. There is no great center. Everything is finite. There is no infinite that's going to give meaning to your life. There is no hope beyond because there is nothing beyond. And so the narrator calls us to a much greater center, to a center that is infinite. Fear God and keep His commandments, because God is not AWOL. God is present with us. Fear God and keep His commandments. Qoholet, I think, as we noticed last week, seemed to be heading in this direction anyway. Remember, he seems to be pretty agnostic about the afterlife early on in the book, but as we got closer to the end, remember last week, we noticed he says to the young people, now you go out and enjoy your youth all you want, but within parameters. Because God's going to bring everything into judgment, which is exactly what we're hearing from the narrator, right? And then he says, finally what's going to happen is the body is going to go to the dust, but the spirit will return to God. So even Qoholet seems to be beginning to see this. When you think about the creation and you look at the stars, or you look at something small like the human eye, you're really impressed with God, aren't you? I mean, it's just amazing to think about. With a snap of His fingers, or with just a breath out of His mouth, He has created all of this in the same way that He parted the Red Sea and brought the 10 plagues. And so I could ask you, as you think about all those things, I won't do this, so I don't want to show of hands, but I'd ask you, do you believe in God? I'm pretty sure, since you're in church, everybody's going to raise their hand. Jonah believed in God. And God said to Jonah, I want you to go over here to Nineveh and preach to these people. And Jonah went this way. Jonah believed in God, but he didn't fear God. And so God got a hold of him by the ears. You did not hear me, Jonah. And the way He got a hold of him was a really big fish. He said, I want you to go to Nineveh. And all of a sudden, Jonah feared God. When you fear God, you do what God says. It may not always make the most sense to you, but you trust God and you do what He says. When you fear God, you make Him the center of your life so that you could, at least in theory, strip away all that other stuff and still life would be full of meaning because God is still there in the center. When you fear God, you live thinking about things above the sun, not under the sun. If you only believe, then it's easy to make God AWOL. Other things can become the center. Yeah, I believe in God. Maybe I show up at church. But it's those other things that are driving my life. And really what I'm doing is I'm obeying those other things. So as we close Ecclesiastes this morning, here's the question I just want you to take with you this week. And seriously contemplate this question. Do I fear God? Or do I just believe God? Let's stand and sing.